Hello everybody, happy Halloween, and it is I, the bitch behind the slaughter. Yes, so, if you've seen by the title, this is a Five Nights at Freddy's review. Before we begin this, yes, there will be spoilers, however, before you leave, I'm gonna put this into about, I think, 4 sections, which is a basic what you need to know going into this film. That will be spoiler free. It will have my final number review of the film, as well as just some general things you need to have your mind set on before going into the film. Then the next section will be like what I liked, what I disliked, then audience reaction based on what the people in my cinema were doing, because I've done that for the last couple of movie reviews I've done, and some notes from my partner who wasn't as engaged in the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom as I was in high school and middle school. Hello everybody, my name is Brooklyn, otherwise known as the Dramatic Otaku, and welcome to this Halloween special movie review, that being Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I have literally just gone to see this film. That is why I'm dressed like this. I was kind of cosplaying, kind of just doing a fashion thing based on the purple guy from Five Nights at Freddy's, otherwise known as William Afton. I was very excited for this film, especially seeing as I, for years, essentially since the first game came out, have been really invested in Five Nights at Freddy's. I've never played the games for myself, but I have been very invested in the lore. So I knew what was going to happen pretty well. So let's begin this review with the completely non-spoiler part. This is just what you need to know going into the film, what mindset you kind of need to be in, and generally what the film is without any spoilers. As a horror fanatic, this is baby's first horror movie. I was a little bit underwhelmed with what the horror was like for this film, especially seeing as the games are non-stop jump scares, and this surprisingly had very little jump scares in it, which is a good thing for most people. I don't like horror movies with jump scares in it, so yeah. I think my expectations were set too high by Scott Cawthon, because he would say, I think in 1 or 2 interviews, that he was like really excited for this film. He wasn't sure if like half the stuff they were filming was allowed in the film because it was really like explicit or something, and I'm now sitting here going, what the fuck was he talking about? This is baby's first horror movie. Quite literally too, it did actually feel, for having a adult protagonist, it actually felt very kid oriented for horror. That being said, I used to watch like the Brothers Grimm movie, and that felt more kid oriented, and that scarred me for fucking life. So going into the film, gore is at a minimum. There is maybe 1 or 2 scenes where you have a character who has like a mutilated face, or like you see a dead body, they've got blood on their face, stuff like that. 1 or 2 scenes, and it's at the most minimum, and it's only there for a couple of seconds. 2, you can watch this movie well enough without knowing a lot about the lore, but it is a lot more enjoyable if you have a lot of knowledge about the lore of the Five Nights at Freddy's series, especially if it's actually lore from when we thought the timeline was completely different to what it is now. Having that entire history of knowledge is very helpful personally. If you do not know all the lore and have not been super developed into the fandom, you can still watch it, but a basic understanding of the series is definitely needed for this film. Otherwise, some elements could be lost as to what the fuck is going on. The puppetry is really good. The Jim Henson Company did a fantastic job. It kind of speedruns the lore of FNAF 1 through 3, hints at sister location, and kind of hints at the newest game as well. However, you kind of just need to know the lore from games 1 through 3. In general, my opinion of the film was that it was generally good, very nostalgic for someone who knows all the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, but was kind of mediocre on a horror fanatic stance, especially since this is based off of a horror game. It's not going to be the same experience as the games, it's more so if you like the lore, you're gonna like this film. But I thought, yeah, generally mediocre but nostalgic, very baby's first horror movie, that sort of stuff. That being said, we are now going to get into the more spoiler section, so if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Now for the rest of you, we're gonna go into like what I liked about the film and what I also disliked about the film. First of all, what I liked about the film. This is a bulleted list, this is kind of improv, so bear with me. One is I loved Matthew Lillard in this film. Mans knows how to do horror and how to be a horror movie villain. Of course, like, I had high standards for Matthew Lillard from the get-go. Mans is Ghostface and Shaggy, but he actually like was really good in this film. He was like cartoony but not too animated. I will say I also really liked that in the first scene that he is shown in, he's not wearing purple, so it's not obvious that he's the purple guy, but there is a little bit of a hint that he is the purple guy because he wears a purple tie. At least I think that was a purple tie. I'm fucking hoping it was. But yeah, I really liked his acting. He was so into his character. It was fantastic. The ending, wonderful. His entrance into like the climax of the film, oh my god, that was such a good scene. Especially the first appearance of him being like all rotted and all that sort of shit. Fantastic. How he interacted with Vanessa as well, how he interacted with Michael. His interaction, he didn't really interact with Abby all that much, but his interaction with Vanessa was fantastic. I loved it. Matthew Lillard in this film was fantastic. He is one of the highlights of this film. His death as Spring Bonnie, loved it. Kinda wish there was more. Kinda wish it was a little gorier. Especially since the one thing I didn't like about Matthew Lillard being in this film is he was in so little of it. For such an important character to the series, he needed to be in more. I was expecting him to appear as phone guy every single night, and he didn't, and that was really disappointing. I really wish he did. There was a nod to him being phone guy. He was in the very start of the film and the very end of it. I really wanted to see a lot more of Matthew Lillard as William Afton, but for the part that he stole the show. And yeah, the spring trap scene, it was okay. There could have been more. For everyone else in the theatre, they were all kind of just like, what the fuck? Even my partner, she was just like, whoa, what the fuck? I think I've been desensitized. Continuing on, the balloon boy jump scares. I know this was a joke, but I loved it. I honestly loved them so much. There's even an after credit scene or a mid credit scene. I don't know if there was a proper after credit scene. We didn't stick around to find out, but the mid credit scene was great. I loved all the balloon boy scenes, especially because everyone fucking hates that balloon boy in gameplay and all that sort of shit. So I thought it was really funny. And those were the only actual jump scares there were. All the names of the characters are names that have been included in the franchise. Obviously this is an adaptation film, but I like how they included as many of the names as physically possible into the series, as well as some of the scenes, horror-wise, from a horror framing, were really, really good. Now, it's few and far between as to what ones are really good and what ones were kind of mid, but the ones that I really liked, like I said, when William Afton first walks in the Spring Bonnie suit, I love that. It's so cool. I like when he's being dragged off by animatronics, as well as him sort of like twitching and groaning in the back room. I liked that one as well. There is a scene where some people like enter Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and they like trash the place. and one of the guys gets mauled by Chica's fucking hell. One of the guys gets mauled one of the guys gets mauled by Chica's cupcake, and while the scene isn't that bad, stop looking at me like that. So the guy that got mauled by Chica's cupcake, okay, there's a scene afterwards where we see the remains of him and his mauled face. That was effective. I thought it was good. It was good gore. Generally, I also really liked the puppeteering of the Jim Henson Company. I thought it was so cool, and I thought it was kind of uncanny how closely they looked like the actual animatronics from the game.
We gotta keep an eye out for those animatronics and any suspicious business going on near them.
Practical effects I thought were really good. The only proper CGI that I actually saw was Chica's cupcake moving around, but like from an effects standpoint, special effects, the practical effects were done really well, and I really liked them. And yeah, that is mostly what I liked. And probably just Matthew Lillard, the kind of in-jokes on the series, stuff that like someone who's been a part of the fandom since its inception has like really liked, as well as like, or would have known, sorry, as well as like, as a horror fanatic, there were some scenes that were really good, and as someone who really likes theatre and films and all that sort of stuff, practical effects, puppeteering, and just the creation of the animatronics was really cool, and that is just something to be applauded for from the Jim Henson Company. Now let's get into what I dislike about this film. I was not expecting a fucking switch up halfway through the film of like them trying to humanize the animatronics. Was not a fan of that, but also like just the tonal change of being like, we're gonna be friends with this child. Was not expecting that. I feel like there's a better way they could have gone around that issue. And this is what I mean by I say it's baby's first horror movie, because that very much was to disperse any tension that anyone had in the film. I didn't like the way that the babysitter dies. The way that I think about it is that reminded me of a very similar scene in, like I said earlier, the Brothers Grimm movie. In FNAF, the babysitter dies by Freddy swallowing her, essentially chomping her in half, and her body falls to the floor, which that looked very cartoony because we only saw the shadow of it happening. And like when she was putting her head in the fucking mouth of the animatronic, my thought was, oh my god, the bite of 87.
Was that the bite of 87?
It's the fucking bite of 87. I was severely disappointed that it was not the bite of 87. She puts her head in and gets swallowed. You could have so easily done the bite of 87, and that would have been so cool and a great visual image later for horror reasons. But instead you swallowed her and cut her in half. I thought it was too cartoony and was a waste of a perfect opportunity. But we will talk about that moment again soon. Some parts felt repetitive, and I don't mean the dream. The dream was purposely repetitive. Mike literally states why he's dreaming the exact same dream over and over again. What I mean is that FNAF is a repetitive game, so the nights feel very samey, but I thought we were gonna spend more like tense nights at Freddy's, not like a bunch of time outside of Mike's house in Mike's life. It felt like we were a little too much there. That being said though, I did like the plot development in that sense, but yeah. Also, Vanessa. The way she tries to explain things and expects Mike to know what the fuck she's saying. Like, I know the games, I know what happens, I know the plot, and I didn't know what the fuck Vanessa was trying to say. Subtle. She wasn't being subtle, she just was not dropping hints point blank. She was expecting telepathy to fucking work. Also, I expected Vanessa's character to be, a friend of one of the kids who died, kind of like the puppet. She wasn't. And I was a little bit surprised by that. Why did everything fall apart at the end? That's something I don't understand just in horror in general, because that tends to happen a lot. I guess like spiritual essence makes everything fall apart, but I don't quite understand why everything literally fell apart. And yeah, other than that, yeah, my main, in terms of like plot wise, thought it was decent. Relation to the actual games themselves, thought it was good. But I have issues with Scott Cawthon really setting my expectations high on what the horror was gonna be for this film, because I thought it was gonna be way more than it was. I was expecting it to be way more than it was. Have I been hugely desensitized by the likes of Junji Ito and all the horror manga I've been reading this month? 100%. But I was still expecting more, especially seeing as it was a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Now, I was going to do my audience reaction stuff next, but I'm actually going to put in some notes based on what my girlfriend was saying about the film after the film happened, just because there are some points in here that like I 100% agree with that I didn't really think of, so I wanted to make it evident that she, as someone who wasn't as involved in the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom as I was, thought of the film, just as like sort of a baseline reference. But as a precursor to this sort of part of the review, my girlfriend did have some level of knowledge, more than someone who does not know the series whatsoever, more than like say a mum who is just taking her kids to see this film because they really want to go see this film. In terms of plot setups, so there was obvious plot setups strewn throughout the film. It is like things are made very, very obvious, such as Matthew Lillard's character. He is clearly the endgame villain from the start of the film. By the fact that he stutters in finding out Michael's full name, he is like very panicked, and that's what sends him to Freddy Fazbear's. That obviously makes him knowledgeable about who Michael is and makes him the endgame villain, very clearly. Now, that's not to say that it was a big surprise, or supposed to be a big surprise as to who he was, but kind of was supposed to be a surprise as to who he was. Because at the start, we see his nameplate. It's not labelled as William Afton. And then Vanessa says that William Afton is killing kids. And who walks out? The guy at the start, whose name wasn't William Afton. However, the guy at the start was acting so suspicious that it was kind of obvious that he was William Afton. Next is just something about the animatronics. She really loved the designs, much like I did, because the puppeteering was by the Jim Henson Company and it was really, really good. Enough said. She thought Vanessa was cute. You better not steal my girl, I swear to God. I feel threatened. What do you mean Vanessa's cute? Is this payment for you calling Vanessa cute? Don't you nod at me? In general, the film, from her perspective, was relatively endurable. Like, she could watch it, she enjoyed it, it was fun, and for her limited knowledge of FNAF, she had a good time, relatively. I didn't even know what it was, that's why I'm referring to it as the scoop. But the problem is that the scoop scoops out your fucking innards. What this is a mutilation blade thing. Why does it exist? Is it supposed to be referenced to the scoop? What is it? Why does it have Freddy's face? And why is it important to the story, other than for tension building? Probably is the biggest thing that is reoccurring and we don't exactly know what it is. 2. For those who don't know the FNAF story, William Afton is not explained well at all. Like, it's very tell don't show in terms of what William did. There's no mystery being unlocked on the William Afton front, and for such an important character to the series, he's not explained all that well. The entire gist that she got is that he is a child murderer, and that's it. Not exactly as to why he still has the pizzeria, other than nostalgia, as Vanessa says, and I don't think that's a good enough excuse. Like, why is he still got it there? Why is he still employing people? Why is it technically still open? Like, not open to the public, but open enough that it needs a fucking security guard. With who he hires for security guards, why does he hire the people he does? Because at the very start of the film, there's a different security guard, and we don't know his story. He's just there to be murked. Well, quite literally, he's just there to die. And like with William hiring Michael, he sees the surname, knows it's the surname of one of his victims, and hires him. Why did he hire him? Was he going to then kill Michael? Or did he know that Michael had a sister? Why did William think that Abby would go to the pizzeria? It's all by happenstance that this happens, that he goes to, that Abby ends up at the pizzeria, so that William would go to kill her. Like, why did he hire Michael in the first place? Is it to finish the job he started? Is it to taunt Michael? What is the reason? That is my thought process. William's character isn't explained well. Like, Matthew Lillard's performance is fantastic. The motivations, other than child killing, for Michael to be at the pizzeria because of William doesn't make sense. That is probably the biggest thing. Like, my only thought process is maybe Michael was supposed to be the victim. But at the same time, like, have other security guards had children? And that's why they're the victims? Why is he killing security guards if he is killing security guards? Because based on the first scene, he's fucking killing security guards. Whereas in the game, they just left. So I don't understand that point. And like, another thought process that comes to mind is that William's watching always. But it's not explained that if he is watching always or not. How does he know that there's a child in the fucking pizzeria? Can he see everything? Can he see through the fucking animatronic's eyes? We don't know. The fact that there is this many unanswered questions really, like, is bothering me. And it's not explained in the movie, and I get there's probably going to be more movies, but it's not explained in this one. And to people who don't understand the lore, to people who do understand the lore, it does not make all that much sense. And I really wish, first of all, that Matthew Lillard was in more of this film, and that it was less tell don't show on the end of William Afton. Speaking of the Aftons, Mike is Mike Schmidt. That is the big spoiler of the entire film, that Mike is Mike Schmidt, which if you played the first game, that wouldn't be too big of a surprise, because that's whose name is on the payslip at the end of game 1. But probably the biggest thing that I will say is that the fact that William shouts Mike Schmidt means nothing to someone who does not know the lore, nor knows anything about the games. Mike, throughout the entire film, has called himself Mike. And I get that this is an adaptation film, it's for people who know the games and all that sort of stuff, but for the perspective, essentially if you think from the perspective of someone who's not known the film, that will bomb the score of the film, with so many things relying so heavily on you knowing the lore of the game and you knowing that it's important that this is Mike Schmidt and not Michael Afton. That, I think, is probably the worst part, that while you can go into this without knowing anything, some of the actual important parts of the film rely on you knowing the lore of the games. And that is probably one of the worst parts of the film. And not only from my perspective, also from my girlfriend's. And I can say this as I have also watched probably the best adaptation of the year, probably of all time recently, and that was the One Piece live action. The One Piece live action plays out the events of One Piece. The film of FNAF could have done something similar. You could have done the lore of the game, done it effectively, and done it in the way that they have, but also make it so that the audience is not required to know the lore of the game and all the characters, so that certain events are super important. That is probably my biggest critique of the film. Okay, so my main review is done. Now we get to move into the audience reactions from the cinema that I was in. Now this cinema was pretty packed. It's like 2 days after the release of the film, unlike when I watched Barbie and it was 2 weeks after. In general, reacts like during the film, and what did I find funny? So first of all, I found it so fucking annoying to hear kids mouth off that fucking fucking hated it. So annoying. Every quiet moment there was a kid doing that, and it was like the same 4 kids around the cinema doing it, and they thought they were the funniest shit. So frustrating. But there was like actual adults telling them to stop because it was annoying everyone. So not only was it adults, but little kids, other kids were telling these children to fucking stop because it was annoying. We weren't the only ones who thought this. Plenty of people thought this. As I said, adults and children were telling these people to shut the fuck up. I'm assuming that's gonna happen in a lot of cinemas around. That was probably the most annoying thing. Also, who claps for a movie? What in the white people? At the end of the film, there was just like half of the cinema decided to applause. When did people clap for cinema? Live theatre, sure, and like premieres, when there are people actually at the fucking screening of the film, that's when I get clapping for the film. But if it's just an audience watching a movie, when have people clapped for a movie? That is the thing that I don't understand. To me, that's like clapping when a plane lands. What the fuck? Don't let this start as a trend, please. Into the more like light-hearted, funny stuff. For one of the biggest spoilers, I'm not gonna reveal it because it genuinely actually surprised me, but the surprise that it gave everyone else was a little bit funny, because everyone was way more surprised than they probably could have been, or should have been, should I say, because yeah, it was a bit of a shock. Oh my god, what do you mean this has happened? But it wasn't worthy. It was not gasp worthy. And there was a couple of gasps in the film, and I was in the audience and I was just like, are you fucking serious? That was not... And my girlfriend thought similar. She was like, why are they gasping so hard at that? And speaking of overreactions, this is where I think I've been super desensitized. The babysitter's death. Like I mentioned earlier, she gets sucked into Freddy's body and chopped in half. We see this as an animated shadow. The amount of people that were like, oh my god, in this film, I was shocked at. And it made me realize that, like, cause no reaction. I was like, oh fuck, there's no bite of 87. That is actually so depressing. That was my thought process. Everyone else was like, oh my god, what the fuck? So I may be a little bit fucked up. This is one that I participated in 100%. It is the collective, everyone hushed whispering as soon as MatPat walked on screen. And not even as soon as he starts talking, everyone's like, oh my fucking god, it's MatPat. MatPat's in the FNAF movie. Oh my god. And a similar thing to a lesser degree happened when Corey Kenshin came on screen. That's probably because he's less known than MatPat. Especially because MatPat is so essential to the lore community of FNAF. But yes, that is my review for FNAF. In general, I gave it an 8 out of 10. It is, as I said, mediocre but nostalgic. There were some really good scenes in the film, and Matthew Lillard's performance was stellar. He absolutely stole the show. I scored it 8 out of 10 solely because I did actually enjoy the film. I thought it was very enjoyable. As someone who nostalgia-wise loved FNAF as a kid, more so like in my pre-teens to teens, I was huge into the FNAF fandom and really loved it. So to watch so much actual lore from the games be put into a film was really good. However, I do have to be critical of the fact that if there are people who didn't know the lore of the film, who didn't understand the series in general, this would not be really like enjoyable to them. They can still watch it, they can enjoy it for all the other things, but they cannot properly enjoy the film. And sure, it was made for FNAF fans, but for some films, even if they're adaptations, especially if they're adaptations, films should be able to communicate their message without relying on another piece of media. You see it a lot in book adaptations. They can relay their story completely fine. You can see this in manga to live action adaptations, though a lot of people fuck it up. This could and should be done well enough in game adaptations as well. However, we all know the ever-changing lore of FNAF. I have no doubt that that really helped shape why the film had so many questions at the end, particularly around William Afton. 8 out of 10, I really enjoyed it. As a FNAF fan, I enjoyed it. Many FNAF fans enjoyed it. It was for FNAF fans. That is my main critique. There were too many questions unanswered about William Afton, and while it is left open to a second film, it could have been better in a lot of ways. Lore-wise, to the actual games, it could have been better. But solely based on the fact that I enjoyed it, I gave it an 8 out of 10. If I had to be more critical, it would probably be a 6.5 or a 7. But in general, I enjoyed it. I was part of the target audience. 8 out of 10. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and enjoying this video. This is my Halloween video for this year. Tomorrow is the weeb wrap up. Yes, so I will be uploading tomorrow, Wednesday as usual, and it will be for the weeb wrap up, which is the horror edition of the weeb wrap up for September and October. Hope you guys tune in for that tomorrow at 10 AM, hopefully. It might be 10 PM by accident. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. What do you guys think of the movie? And what are your opinions on FNAF? I would love to know. Would you guys like to see me play FNAF at one point? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Bye.